Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Human SOS Show, our weekly episode. We're up to number 72, and we're going to be talking about the question of caring by leadership for their team members and how it factors in. Does it going to affect stress levels and so on? So, should have an interesting discussion today. Be sure as you join us to put in where you're joining from and then engage with us by sharing your reactions and your thoughts and your questions and comments. So, Anton, you want to open us up here?
Absolutely. Just welcome everybody that's joining live or anybody that's joining, later in a recording, restream or whatever the fancy folks call this later on when you're catching it. But today we're going to dive into leadership, right? Talking about leadership as a buffer for stress, but really from a standpoint of being a caring leader. It's something that we talk about often, but I don't think enough of it is being done still. I'm really celebrating the leaps and bounds we've made from, the 90s and early 2000s, but we need to keep staying focused on this. We'll dive first into an article that, we always start with HR articles, and then we'll talk about the main conversation with some, statistics for you guys and really suggestions on what to do. But really buffering your team stress, I think that's one of the biggest things that we focus on with leaders because it is really a performance killer. So just real quick, one of the articles that came across this morning and on SHRM.org, employers apply different requirements to vaccinated and vaccinated team members. And to me, I can't not have my bias on this because I'm an extremely logical person. By the way, if you guys want to check out Kevin's channel from yesterday, we did a conversation on fear, which, we discussed a lot of these things in great detail. If you guys don't check out Kevin's Monday, what is it, Wisdom Seeker live or podcast?
Live podcast, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely check it out. I would happen to be a guest yesterday, but I'm a regular attendee. But employers, this is just the thing that they're saying, and we're not going to spend too much time on this. Wear a mask, maintain social distancing, work remotely, and test regularly. The bottom two, I can kind of understand. Maintain social distancing should be for everybody, not just unvaccinated employees and wearing a mask. I don't understand. And this is the only thing, Kevin, you tell me how you feel about this. I just want to get your perspective. And if audience, you have perspective on this, I want you to help me make sense of this. Because from what I can understand, unvaccinated people still are virus carriers and transmitters, right? So they're able to pass it on to each other the same way as an unvaccinated person can. Is that a correct assumption, Kevin? Have you heard that as well?
Yes, it's been interesting because originally we were told that the vaccination would protect us and everybody else, and it'd be great. Now they're finding out that that may not be so. So at this point, we can't assume that anyone is better protected than the other. In fact, what they're even saying is that the only thing they will offer is that the vaccinated people, their symptoms may be lessened, but no guarantee that they can't get the virus because that has been proven wrong, and no guarantee that they can't transmit the virus.
And it connects really closely to what we talked about yesterday, where fear makes us be a little bit irrational. And I think that that's what companies have become so fearful of shutdowns and so fearful of losing, revenue streams and things like that, that they're starting to make these decisions. But they don't make any logical sense to me. I go, if you actually understand how this all works, your things that you're making people feel different, it's going to cause employee conflict and cause all sorts of issues that are a really big deal, are not actually effective. That's all I really wanted to say about this. We can dive in unless you got something else to add, Kev.
Well, I am contemplating an article because I believe this to be true, is that we are seeing a new form of discrimination coming out, and because of this whole question. And I think that ultimately, what I've observed, there's going to be some legal challenges with all of this, and it's going to get interesting. And so Leaders need to be aware. They need to be staying on top of things, and so on.
Cool. Let's get into the presentation, and not really a presentation, just us really talking. But what makes a caring leader, folks, right? And Kevin had a great idea of pulling the slides down after we talked, because he realized that it's probably more entertaining to watch my goofy face than it is to watch, to watch the screen. So we'll put that up, but I want you guys to chime in. I want you to say, what do you think makes a caring leader? What are these traits? What are these attributes per se, however you want to say it? Because it's really individualized. Coming out here and saying, here's the 5 things that do that, that would be very limited belief. And Kev, you can pull that down and we can just talk about it. But
Okay.
I really want to hear from the audience. In your experience, some of these best leaders, what are these stories that made you feel like they deeply cared about you, who you were? What about you, Kev? I mean, what are some things that, that you feel are exemplary to caring leaders?
Well, I tell you, I have to share a story of my own experience in relationship to this, because my leadership journey included becoming an educator, teacher, and then applying leadership in that environment. And going in to that environment, my intent was to treat my students just like my own children, with love, care, concern, and what's best for them. And so I got into it, and then in my second year, I was working on getting my program industry accredited, nationally accredited. And one of the things that we were required to do, which was an interesting exercise, was to get a feedback from class, like a course survey or whatever that we see in some cases. And so I did that, and not being very creative on my own, I found something on the internet to use for the survey. And one of the questions that was included in this survey was, does your teacher care about you? And had I done my own written my own survey, I'm not sure that would have been high on my list of questions to ask, but nevertheless, I did ask it. And what was really mind-boggling to me was that when I got these surveys back, and this was across probably 100 students, 80% of them that responded said that they did not think I cared. And it just shocked me. And interesting, during this time frame, the relationship to my leadership as a teacher in that class, the word on the street was, Mr. Ward, you better watch your back. So I wasn't in the most positive relationship with my students, and even had my life threatened during that time. Anyway, what I did is I backed up and tried to figure out, why is that not happening? And part of it is, as a leader, a teacher, because I truly cared about these young people, I made it a point to really hold them accountable and help them grow and get ready for what they were facing. And sometimes that meant holding them accountable for things that they were not always comfortable with, and didn't understand the need for. So what I realized was that at that time, they did not understand my motivation. All they saw was this teacher that was pushing them really hard to get better at what they are and develop, and so on. What they didn't understand is why I was doing that. And at that point, I figured out my vision for that class, for those students, and literally I wrote it out and had it put on a big piece of poster board, had it laminated, and stuck it on the wall. And going forward, I reminded them, I assumed, and you know how that goes quite often, and I keep proving it. You would think I'd learn not to do that. But anyway, I assumed that they would understand that I really cared about them, but they didn't. So I had to incorporate my why, the vision of what I was doing and why I went about what I did. And within 1 year, the students that I had in my program, because I could have them up to 4 years, all of a sudden, the mindset and attitude changed on their part. They began to respond differently. And the new word on the street was, Mr. Ward, we've got your back. So the relationship shifted and removed some of that tension, the tension of, I don't want to do what you want me to do. And it was in and around them understanding that what I was doing was based and motivated in genuine care and concern for them. So
I think the key
really
word you just hit is
make,
relationship, right, Kev? Like that right there. I want to just emphasize. You said the relationship changed,
yes,
and you established the relationship with these folks, right? And then you became a better communicator through vision and things like that. And I just want to emphasize this word because I think in leadership, oftentimes it's a lot of these. We don't think about relationship, right? We think
right.
about it as something else and different things that are labeled, but you established relationship. Would you agree with that?
That's right. And that relationship became key because then we weren't trying to deal with relationship differences. We were dealing with other issues, learning, growing, overcoming obstacles and things like that. The relationship at that point was solidified because it was based in understanding that I had care for them. And that just, again, I can't express how much of a difference that made.
I've struggled as a leader in showing care, right? And
Right.
it's not that I didn't care. I've always cared. I cared about others more. I always care about my team more than I care about myself. For military days, I'll take a bullet for any one of my folks. Jump on a grenade. That's the kind of
Mm-hmm.
mindset I've always had, and I continue that on in everyday life. But for me, this is why I think that men and women sometimes are slightly different. And I'm being a little stereotypical here, but statistically speaking, there is a difference between how women lead and how men lead. Yes, there is men that can lead like women, and there's women that can lead like men. But when we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about majority of it, I think that women are a bit better at establishing relationships. They're a bit better
Mm-hmm.
at being in the moment, right? And really showing care in that moment. Where even in like parenting and leadership is not that different, folks. I think that there's a lot of parallels between being a parent and being a
Oh
leader.
yeah.
And me and my wife, we talk about this all the time where she's really concerned about the kids in the moment, their happiness, their state of mind that they're
Mm-hmm.
in. And I'm always thinking about them in the future. I'm thinking about what am I preparing them for and what am I developing them into? And I was the same way as a leader. And unfortunately, because I lacked of being in the moment and building that relationship, all the things that I was trying to do in the long term were less effective. And I
Right.
think that that's one of the solutions that we need is more women in leadership. We need to push that envelope further and create a better balance because we can't go and say, okay, only women should be leaders. We know that there is strengths on both sides, but I think
Right.
there's still a gap and we need to close it. If you pull up a stat on the next slide, Kev, there's some statistics, and I was shocked when I saw these. I was really, really surprised to see the disparity between some of the countries. And we see that senior management percentage of women in the workforce, North America, second worst, right? And that's where we're coming from. Asia Pacific is the worst. North America is second worst. And then we're getting to European Union, Latin America, Eastern Europe, and then Africa. 38% for Africa. Great. We're almost there. They're getting closer and closer. And I think this is what we have to improve on in order for leaders to become more caring. By having more women as leaders, men will have to step up their game. They also will learn more from interaction with those leaders
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the stuff that you and me are talking about right now and where our weaknesses were are from lack of awareness. We
Yeah.
thought we cared. We thought we really showed that care, but we didn't have maybe the right examples for around us or enough of them to say, this is what we really need to focus on, or these are the things, the attributes I need to take on.
Yeah. And that's the value of gender diversity, and is that it brings different relational components into the mix. And it's just, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this one, but there are differences in genders by design, and please understand, not one better than another. They're just different, and we have to recognize that and have the benefit of the strengths of the two genders to be able to complement each other in these workforce relationships. Welcome, Mohammed from the UK. Glad to have you.
And you can pull that down, Kev. I just wanted the audience to see,
Yeah.
It was shocking for me to see that North America was second worst. I was like, wow, we talk about this all the time, but yet it's not there. But yeah, so relationship is the number one thing. I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to have in order to be caring leaders. Because if you don't have the relationship, you can't understand the person's needs. How can you be a caring leader if you don't understand what you need to care about?
Right. Well, and interesting that the U.S. would be lower in percentages, given that we probably have more laws to protect, gender and different inequalities than anyone. Yet we're not there in getting the equality in terms of, at least numerically, and so, yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, man. I mean, that's the reality. We pretend like things are a certain way, but behind closed doors, they're still very much the same. But at the same time, I want to celebrate how far we've come, because if we are going to change and we're going to become better, we can't just run from a negative. We have to celebrate the steps we've made. We have to run and chase the positive. Good morning, Karen. How are you doing? Folks, feel free to reach out and text or message right now. Like, I want to hear what attributes you think makes a caring leader. That's kind of the topic of conversation today. And I would love to find out what you believe are those attributes. That could be whatever you think they are. Right now, we've covered relationship, but the other thing that, Kev, your story made me think is, how do we show that care, right? It's coming back to the 5 love languages. I'm a huge fan. When I read that book, it really didn't just change me as a person from a personal standpoint. It changed me as a leader, because I realized that constantly developing people and giving all the time I could into them, helping them with their pay, increasing their salaries, those are acts of service. But not everybody's love language is acts of service.
Right.
So that would be another attribute, is knowing how to tailor the care, not one size fits all. By first establishing a relationship and then understanding the people, then knowing how to show that care in a way that they want to receive it, not the way that we want to receive it, in the way they want to receive it.
Well, and that's part of caring, okay, just very practically, is effective communication. Again, the story I shared of my own experience, part of that was my being effective in communicating why I did what I did in relationship to these young people that I asked to follow me to help them move forward and learn. And so, yeah, communication is key. And as we've come to understand, not everybody communicates the same. I mean, at a baseline, you've got difference between male and female communication. And then you get into, like you've mentioned, love languages, and some would say, well, no romance in the office, but love is not just about romance. It's about an overall concept of care and concern. And it goes to our motivation as to why, what motivates us. Does love motivate us? And again, I know there's some people, especially my generation, rolling their eyes going, oh boy, here we go. Group hug and singing Kumbaya and all that. No, love is a principle and a motivator, and should be at the heart of what we do by design as well. So yes, and as Muhammad comments, being a good listener, such a key component. Just the act of stopping, close our mouths, open our eyes and our ears, and pay attention to someone expresses in massive quantities the concept of care.
Mohammed, that's a great point. That's a huge part of communication, and it's a weakness of mine. I continue to work on this very, very hard, knowing that it's a weakness of mine, because I'm a problem solver. And that's what I want to do. I want to jump into the solving the solution because I care, and acts of service is my love language. I want to jump straight in and help them out, wrap my arms around them and tell them, let's do this, let's fix this. But if they don't feel heard, if they feel like it's just, another number and I'm just coming to on automation solving a problem, even if it's the right solution, even if it's the right problem, these people have to feel heard. And sometimes there doesn't need to be a solution. They just need to feel heard. They need to get something off their chest. They need to, be understood more than they need to have a solution to what they're talking about. And that's a really good point. And with me, I really, I don't know if you guys have any advice on how to be a better listener. I'm all ears, for that as well. I couldn't tell. I thought you were frozen for a sec.
Oh. Yeah, the leadership is a challenge, and if one of the differences, I suppose, is that, and I go to servant leadership, that's just where I go, and when I do that, one of the distinguishing factors in between a leader and a servant leader is the heart, the caring. A servant leader, and again, I know this is an extreme example, but a servant leader, just like you mentioned earlier, we take a bullet. We would jump on the grenade. We would shield our team members, our followers, whatever term you like, from bad consequences where we can. And that's the heart of being a servant leader, and real important. And let's see, Muhammad offers a comment: allow people to use their creativity, and in some cases allow them to make mistakes. Oh yeah.
And that's jumps into caring leaders understand that in order for me to allow my team members to reach their potential, which me and Kevin are both huge on this, but team member and human potential is at the core of everything that both of us do. You have to let people walk their path. You have to let people to, it's a terrible term, but have a really long leash, right? Like just where we still have some oversight. We're not going to let them run off the cliff because, they're doing something completely wrong and it's going to cause them harm. But we're going to give them a lot of freedom to have expression from creativity standpoint, but also ability to make mistakes, even if we know it's going to end up being a mistake. Don't be a rescuer. I've been there myself, guys. I'm telling you, I've made so many things wrong. I can talk about all day about the mistakes that I've made in the past, but allow them to make those mistakes because they're going to grow. Nobody's going to listen to us and say, well, I really want to do this because you told me not to. I'm going to think that it's the wrong thing to do. No, I'm just going to resent you as a leader as being restrictive and not allow me to, express myself and make those mistakes. But Kev, you're talking about communication, and you mentioned the word love. We have to remember that love has very many different meanings. I believe there's 5 different meanings of love, and probably more than that if we really expand them. But when we go to like the Greek term, I think it's Greek or Roman, I can't remember which one. There's many different types of love. And adoration, not from the standpoint of like, sexual or physical, adore your team. I think that's what a caring leader should be. And to me, that means belief. Right? You adore them so much. You see the core that they're great and good on the inside. I was leaving a comment on LinkedIn yesterday and talking about what makes, effective leadership. And they were talking about some quote. And I was like, this means to me that compassion means that I believe in you. And I know that sometimes you make mistakes, to your point, Mohammed. Sometimes you make mistakes. But because I know that you're good on the inside and I adore what I see on the inside within you, I'm going to just believe in you so much that you're going to get there versus constantly coming down on people and reprimanding them. And, if you adore your team, you're not going to feel that they're bad people. There's no bad people, in my opinion, when it comes down to employees, right? There's bad people in the world, but most places, don't have bad people. So that's what I mean by adoration and love.
Yeah. As a leader, one of the best things we can do is try to understand the potential of the people that we're working with, because as a leader, one of your challenges is to be able to see what sometimes they don't even see. And I know that sounds kind of almost, I don't know, arrogant, but as a good leader, you need to be able to really get attuned to your folks and recognize that potential. In fact, this same group of young people, I would get letters from them each year as part of their academic process. And one of the most complimentary statements is that some of them would say, "You believed in me when I didn't even necessarily believe in myself. And you saw in me something that I didn't see at the time," and so on. And that's where we begin to build those relationships for loyalty, for commitment. Again, remember, and this is younger generation, and I know we like to pick on the younger generation over employment issues. But what I watched is as they understood caring, as they began to be communicated with better, they became loyal to the point that they were ready to step in and protect me. Remember, before it was, you better watch your back. And my life was threatened. After that, I know for a fact that had anyone tried to come after me and my students were around, there would have been a fight for them to protect me and so on. And that's the kind of loyalty we are looking for in our employees, but all we do is complain we don't have it and don't take steps that can make a remarkable difference.
Loyalty shouldn't be expected; it should be earned. Give a shout out, Kev, because I know you're going to try that
Yeah,
name, and I can't.
Mwanji.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. You did well.
Yeah,
I think
Mwanji.
Mwanji, did he get your name right? Uganda. I think that's
Mwanji's
the
been
first time
with
we've had Uganda.
I think you're right. Yeah, Mwanji has been with me on Wisdom Seeker in the past, and he's joined today. And then Muhammad makes a great comment. It's a great training ground. And that's what part of being a leader is about, is developing our folks. And that's another way that we develop those loyalties with our people, is when we invest in them. Part of that's the good communication. Part of that is helping them know we care. But the other part is literally helping them learn, helping train them. It changes things. It makes a difference because, frankly, we all have that desire. It's just that those of us that are more senior around here were told that doesn't matter, so don't even try. And so we gave up on it. And the younger generations aren't accepting that. They want to grow and be developed. And one of the best ways to show the caring is that we demonstrate it by helping them develop.
Well, one comment on belief, it's the one thing I've gotten right in my career. It's the best. I would say any leadership success I've ever had, I attributed to believing in my people more than they believed in themselves. And I've had that feedback directly given to me on numerous occasions by many teams, and where I've screwed up, maybe pushing them too hard and, maybe not building enough relationships. I was able to succeed for this number one thing because I believed I saw something great in them, and then I provided the development that was based on that belief. Now, at the same time, if I were to go back and do it all over again, the relationship has to come first, because it's much easier to show that belief. It's much easier to deliver the right communication and care when we establish that relationship first. So if we look at it as like a pyramid, right? If you're going to be a caring leader, I think there's nothing more important at the bottom than relationship. There's many things like communication and different things that go into it. But until that's established, we don't have that stable foundation to develop on, because we could be developing them for something that's not necessarily their passion, their vision, it doesn't connect to their vision and things like that. And all those things would come with a good relationship. So yeah, I definitely suggest for folks, if this is something that you struggle with, what I used to do is I would come in the office and I would look for small things, just tiny little things in their personalities and their capabilities, And I would just glorify that in my own head, you know, kind of like I say, you're happy in life when you learn to appreciate sunshine, you know, reflecting off leaves on the tree. I'm telling you, that's the secret to happiness. When you start to become really happy about the smallest things in your life, you're going to be an amazing leader when you start to appreciate the smallest things in your team members. People that, you know, they didn't even recognize them, they didn't even see it. But guess what? Now you start to make them feel good about everyday small things that they do that may be slightly different from somebody else. And that just makes them want to do them more. It makes them to go and teach others how to do them more because they feel so good about how you view them.
Yeah, Muhammad makes another comment. People underestimate themselves. This is so true. Help people recognize their potential is amazing and sign of a true leader. And it really is a huge difference. And, you know, just as you're kind of the nerdy geek guy on physical health and things, you know, health in general, I am a very nerdy geeky, if you will, on workforce and looking into it. And one of the things that people need to understand about what's going on is the great majority of people coming into the workforce today, high percentages, are coming in already labeled by our system with the big L. Okay, they, even though they don't always behave in that fashion, they deep down inside, they're dealing with a feeling of being a loser because our system, education, our culture has pointed to them and said, you're a loser. And when we can recognize and got to be genuine about it, but when you can recognize the value, the potential they bring, sometimes it's just one incidence of saying, I really do believe in you, that helps someone overcome that loser label. And even in my leadership training that I do for field leaders, I have received stories back where people have demonstrated concern and care for someone on their team and watched their behaviors and attitude turn around almost, I don't want to say exactly, but almost overnight because they of care and concern demonstrated by their leader. Mm-hmm. And if you ever watch it happen, you will then be sold and you will at every turn figure out, how do I let my team members know that I have care and concern about them, very genuine care and concern. And when the team members know that that's your general motivation, when something comes up questionable, okay, you have to make a decision that may not be popular or even understood at the moment. At that point, if you've got that relationship, you're going to be much more likely to be given the benefit of doubt. And as a leader, that is so critical because at moments we have to make decisions that are not going to be popular, but we don't have time maybe to explain them in the moment. We can go back later and do so, but we can't in the moment. And makes such a big difference when we can have the freedom to make that decision and then explain later.
100%, man. And what you're making me think about right now, and let me see, can I share my screen? Does it let me do that?
I would think so. I'll need to stop sharing mine.
No, I think you're not sharing. I think we're good. Hold on.
No, I've got it to the side, so let me stop sharing.
Okay. I just want to show this results pyramid share. Okay, let me minimize this. Can you see this results pyramid right now?
I can now.
Okay, so it's interesting what we're talking about, and this is ultimately caring leaders. Let's not forget something. Leadership has a responsibility to deliver results. That's what leaders are there for. To me, a very simple definition of leadership is going from point A to point B. That point B, be it a human potential being realized or a company goal objective being realized, that's the result. Most times, when we try to talk about what caring leaders have to be or what leaders have to be, we go, these are the actions they have to take, right? These are the things they need to do. That's the development, and it's important. It's there. There's many others we can talk about, but everything we've
Mhm.
talked about so far really goes on the bottom two levels. That relationship is the experience that the leader provides for the team member. If you don't have that relationship, you're not going to set the right belief about yourself to that team member, to that team. If they don't feel the care, it doesn't matter what actions you take. And I think I'm going to write like a graphic that kind of does everything we talked about, because I really like this conversation. And thank you so much to Mohammed for chiming in. This has been great feedback. And we get too much into actions, but remember to set those beliefs. Those beliefs come from many different things. And our interactions, daily interactions, and our belief in them sets their belief in us. We've talked about that. So, don't get over indexed on just the practical stuff. And I'm telling you this, I wish I would have known this 10 years ago. I wish I would have known this 15 years ago. I can't even think about the amount of potential from my teams that I left on the table by not focusing on their experiences and their belief. I got too much into action because I thought that if I just give the right action, the right kind of training, it's going to provide the right kind of result. And you know what I ultimately lacked? We haven't mentioned this word, empathy. I've lacked empathy. And it's because I come from military background, right? And in the military, especially in the Marine Corps, empathy doesn't have a place. There's no room for it. It's not taught, because everything is all about being macho and tough guys and all this kind of stuff. And I think it should change by all means, and to a certain degree. But where I did think I have empathy, this is my advice for folks for my own learning. And please, if you want to, give advice on empathy, I'd love to hear it. Empathy doesn't mean putting yourself in their shoes. That's a wrong concept. I argue that concept all the time because that's what I did. But I put a tough guy into somebody else's situation. They're not necessarily that individual. They may not have as much resilience, or they may have a completely different way of thinking. Empathy is thinking like they do in their situation.
Mm.
That's that additional step. Because if all you're doing is placing yourself in that situation, you may not be giving them the right things that they need, because you would give the right things for what you need in that situation, right?
Mm. Well, and one of the things that, and this is valuable in communication in so many ways, is to me, I can show a great deal of empathy by understanding the context of the person I am working with, understand what they're dealing with. And even just taking the time to get understanding of that goes a long way, because once we begin to see those things, then our demeanor changes, our approach changes, and so it really does make a difference. Let's see here. Muhammad has a comment. He says people say it's all business, but in reality, it's not just business, but personal as well. No doubt. One of the things, and I've stirred up a little bit of controversy that.
No, you did. You never do that.
Yeah, I know. Hard to imagine. Was that I challenged, and to this day, I will say that the idea of work-life balance is a myth. Okay, it is, and it's a unwinnable situation, because work and life are two different things, and one is not equal to the other. When we deal with us, we deal with life. Okay, we don't work all of our life. I understand that most of us will spend a good bit of time working of necessity, but it's still not life. And at the end of the day, what we do work-wise to make a living, earn some pay, at the end of our life may or may not matter, depends on how we relate there. And so the idea of work-life being two entities is a fallacy. And the sooner we understand that, the sooner we have a chance of demonstrating care and having a relationship with the people we lead, and develop a sense of loyalty. If hey, just very pragmatic. If I feel like that all somebody's relating to me on is to get something out of me, no, I'm sorry. I'm not likely going to be very loyal. In fact, on LinkedIn, if people connect with me and then immediately send me a business proposition or something, I sometimes I've been known to actually just immediately disconnect because frankly, that makes me feel like that it's all about them using me for something.
And
And
I'm a little different. Like I don't necessarily I'm not opposed to that completely. But your business proposition better meet exactly what my needs are. But how can you
oh
do
yeah,
that without knowing me? Sometimes people get lucky. Don't get me wrong.
yeah,
Sometimes people have reached out. I'm like, that actually is something that I do need. But if you don't know me, how can you actually get there? But that applies exactly to what we were talking about with being a caring leader. How can you give me anything if you don't know me? How can you provide any solution, any training, any development? And spinning off the whole work-life balance you're talking about, me and Kev talk about this all the time. It's a congruence more now than ever before, especially with this, virtual stuff going on. But care about the whole person.
mm,
It's the whole person. We talked about this in our last show, and it's the mind, body, and spirit. All three components at once, because all of them may have different needs. Each of those components may have different needs, but they're going to negatively impact the person if they're not cared for. And sometimes people don't even know what they need when it comes down to those things, right? Like sometimes we need additional education. And one of those things is stress, right? That's something that we as a company, me and Kev and V, we are really passionate about. We see that there's this massive problem that connects to so many different symptoms, so
mm,
many organizational symptoms, so many personal symptoms, so many emotional symptoms like mental health and things like that. But it's not being seen at the root. It's not being boiled down to this one word, stress, right? The whole time we talked about in your podcast yesterday about fear, I'm like, well, stress drives that more than anything
mm-hmm,
else. But we will talk about fear, but then we won't mention stress as a portion of it. It's not just standalone, but and as a caring leader, that's one thing you have to be prepared in today's world. Look around at what your people are facing today compared to what they even faced 5 years ago, comparing to what they faced 5 years before that. And when you really start to expand your idea of what stress looks like, you go, oh my God, people are on a constant battlefield.
mm,
Like that's the best way I can put it. I want leaders to understand your people are on a constant battlefield, not just at work. That battlefield is all around. Sometimes that battlefield is in their mind. Sometimes that battlefield is at home. Sometimes that battlefield may be at work. But what do we do? Most of the times right now when people try to provide care from a stress management standpoint, where is it focused? Work. That's where a majority of it goes. That's majority of it belongs. Because are you really caring about people then? Or are you just trying to make your work environment better so that way your team performs better? What's the actual outcome as a leader that you desire? Is it that the person's better or is it the work is better? To me, if all we talk about stress management at work, we're just caring about work.
yeah, and quite often along with the caring about work goes physical. We get too uncomfortable with other parts of us as humans, and that is why we see the situations in relationships now and in candidate process. We've dehumanized so much because it's not easy. It's uncomfortable. And by the way, and I hope this is not a newsflash to anyone, but being a leader is not formula driven, and it's not. In fact, some would say it can be messy. I had a pastor comment that at one time: relationships are messy. They are, because people are different, people are at different places, and so on. And part of being an effective, empathetic leader is recognizing and actually doing something with it. Yeah, it's nice to say, yeah, we're all different, but by the way, we're all going to do this thing this way, this time frame. Sometimes you have to do that, but that should not be our default answer. Our default answer should be, okay, who can contribute what in the best way possible based on their strengths, and work to that end. And again, all of this is relational and communicative to make it effective, and very, very important stuff.
I love what
All
you're
right.
saying, that leadership is messy, right? I really like that point.
Yeah, it
Why
is.
is it messy? Because often as leaders, we're going on uncharted paths, right? If you come back to the very basic idea, as I mentioned, leadership is getting people from point A to point B, right? That's where the initial term came from, back from military days and, marching somewhere, winning a war, whatever it may be. But you're often going on uncharted paths. And if you think it's going to be this clean experience, you're not driving down the highway with AC on, right? You're going through the muck, chopping down woods and trees and things like that, and sometimes taking detours because you hit a riverbank or whatever it may be. You hit a cliff and you have to go around it. That's a really great way of thinking about it. And if you're not prepared to get messy with your people and to dive into those relationships and understand them, maybe you shouldn't lead yet. And notice I said yet, because it doesn't mean you shouldn't lead ever. But maybe now you need to spend some time in learning how to establish relationships, how to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and talking about some of these personal things. How is your relationship at home going? Right? Like we've talked about this very often, where stress may be okay, but if you're at work, but if your person is going through divorce and other things, and you're not comfortable talking about that, maybe you're not being a good, relationship person.
Well, and again, one of the challenges in our current workforce that makes for stress is that the assumption that everybody should be a leader of other people. And that is another fallacy that we deal with. And unfortunately, systemically, that is the way we recognize other people, is by offering them leadership roles. And there are people that do not have any interest whatsoever in being leaders of other people. They just want to be the best at what they're doing and be recognized for doing so. And the sooner we can, as organizations, begin to key into that and look for ways to recognize people's value other than offering them an opportunity to take on a leadership role, then we're going to be limited, because the majority of people, just look sheer numbers, majority of people aren't in leadership roles. Majority of the people are in follower roles and are good at it, and really should be celebrated for that. This thing of the leader is the most important, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. Leader, in fact, leader is not most important, and but leaders have to be most responsible. And that's part of the reason some people just say, no, that's not what I want to do. And that's okay. Doesn't make them less than. It just means that they shouldn't be put in those roles just because that's the only way that they can be recognized or advance in their careers.
We have some awesome comments here. I think we should dive into.
Yeah,
Muhammad has a question.
Mwanji.
Oh, there we go. Muhammad, we'll get to yours in a sec.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me throw that one up. I try to keep them in order. Great topic, but how the definition of a caring leader varies across different cultures. Of necessity, yes, that is true. That's why we don't come to an organization and say, okay, here's our program. This is how you do it all. Plug it into your group, because in not only cultural, geographic cultures, but organizational cultures vary. And so, but that's again the challenge of being a leader. You can't just plug in the latest formula, the latest how-tos, the 5 easy steps, the 7 easy habits, that kind of stuff, and say, okay, well, this will work everywhere. It doesn't, because each person, and therefore each team and each culture, is unique. Thoughts on that one, Anton?
To directly answer the question, because you're spot on, it varies, and it can be cultures from, different organizational cultures or different, or geographical cultures, but it boils down to the principles that are important. Establishing a relationship is not going to be any different, irrelevant of what those cultures are. How you go about doing that has to be tailored to the environment that you're in. understanding people's needs is going to be key to any sort of caring leader, right? And those needs are very, very different globally, from country to country, but they're also different culturally. It also depends on the team and where they're at with the team. Kevin will talk to you, a lot about different team dynamics and different stages of teams and how leaders need to be different, behave slightly different with different types of teams and different stages. And understanding that just takes time. You have to assess. You really have to spend a lot of times assessing before you start acting on things, really taking the time to understand those different needs and tailor the care based on those needs.
And that's the value sometimes of having someone from the outside, such as a coach like Anton, myself, V, or any of the other folks we can engage. Having those folks come in and help you with that assessment, because we can't be good at everything. And sometimes doing assessment and evaluation in those terms is not our strength. And unless someone on your team can help you with it, you may need someone to come in that has the experience, the understanding to be able to help do it. And that's where we come in. And as Mohammed's indicated, we don't come in with this one size fits all program that we try to get everyone to adapt to. We come in to try to learn the culture and situation that these teams are in and figure out how the principles overlay, and for that matter, which principles are needed at a given point, because you may already be doing some great things in one regard, but so why even mess with that? Go to the things that are challenging and need to be addressed and deal with those.
Let's chat about Mwanji's comment.
Yeah, let's see. Juanji says that for case that he's in Uganda, trying to elevate the lives of vulnerables or orphans and provide them with little from work of my hands, I face the challenge of leading volunteers. I work with the goals. We always lay solutions for the problems for the children. I lose some of them because it's not their dream, yet myself it is because I have ever been homeless, and I know what children face in their life. We try to, but some don't. Part of the challenge I'm hearing in your comment, Mwanji, is you have a vision. You have a heart for looking forward for these vulnerable people, and that is good. What your key challenge is to do two things. One, share that vision with other people that are volunteering with you. You need to find people that share, at least on some level, the vision you have, because if they share the vision, they're going to be motivated by their part of the vision that the two of you share. The other is, as you're looking at the vulnerable people you're trying to lead, is also, just like I had to do with the young people that I was trying to lead and teach, is to help them understand your vision. And part of that for them is understanding your motivation. Why are you doing it? And so that when you have to tell them no or give them news they don't like to hear, that they understand it's not because you're being selfish. It's not because you are thinking of yourself or the organization, whatever, but that you truly have their best in mind. And one of the keys as a leader is not helping them understand that part of the time that everyone has to subject their needs and desires for the good of the group. And that becomes an important thing. Doesn't mean that you can never have your need met or that you're not going to be understood. It just means that at moments we all have to say, okay, this is not against my core values. It's not my first choice, but it doesn't violate my values. So I'm going to go with the flow on this. I'm going to accept it and support it and do the best I can. And that's part of being an effective team member. And that as a leader is what we have to help our team members grasp and buy into it. And if it's part of that shared vision, okay, then people will be much more likely to say, okay, we're headed in the same direction, but we're going to go about it a little different this time. They're more likely to be able to accept, buy in, and even support.
I really like this question, and it's not so far away from what we deal with in America. Very different, thing you're trying to fix, but not a different problem where people are struggling to motivate people without dangling, a pay carrot in front of them, right? That's become a very common issue, that the only way leaders can motivate these days is promising higher pay or promotion. But not everybody wants that necessarily. Yeah, sure, they could take some more pay, but there's statistics have said that motivation for by pay only goes to a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
In the United States, which I think it's different region by region, but they average that $75,000 is the max amount that you can motivate people by. How does this connect to you, right? Beyond that, they have to be motivated by other factors, internal factors, intrinsic factors. And Kevin just touched on vision, and ultimately I will use that in the word purpose. Because those are the three intrinsic factors I believe in that people really need: purpose, mastery, and autonomy, right? So if you're struggling with motivating these volunteers, do you think that you give them the ability to provide input in how things could be done better? Do you seek out their opinion in how we can improve delivering better results to these kids? And just when people start to do that, if you don't do that, definitely start, because they feel like they're making a bigger impact. They're giving you a lot more. That's the mastery component, but always connects back to the purpose, right? They give you a piece of advice, you go, thank you so much. This is going to help us do this better. But not just do this better. This is going to help X amount of kids stay off the streets, showing them pictures or whatever the way that you can do, telling stories about the impact that change has made, or even in the slightest degree that there's advice has impacted you, and now you're going to be more effective with it, right? And the last one is autonomy, right? That connects all of it together. They get to do things their way a little bit. This is a interesting statistic where this is a few years ago, but I think it was Google, if I remember correctly, gives their employees 20% of their time to do whatever they want, right? Contribute in whatever they want. But 50% of their innovation, their new ideas, come from that 20% of time. Why? It's that intrinsic motivation. It's that desire to have mastery. It's the freedom to do autonomy that connects to the greater purpose of what they're trying to accomplish as a company. So that would be my suggestion for you in a practical sense.
Well, and just remember, there's a principle involved here, and that is, it says where our heart is, that's where our treasure is going to be. Okay, so what we invest in from our heart is where we're going to build treasures, where we're going to invest our time and our resources. So the more that people buy into your vision, that's where their heart is, the more they're going to invest, because it's not only to accomplish that vision for the organization, but it becomes part of accomplishing the vision for themselves. And that is why one of the things is a leader. If I've got a group and I want to take them to the next level, I am working on ways to help them identify who and what and where they are. Because once they understand, because there are so many people out there that have no clue about any of this, they're just going along. And what's really sad is the amount of people that are basing their theoretical vision, their dream, is based on someone else's supposed success. And that is ineffective, and it's frustrating, it's demeaning, because first of all, quite often we don't see what went into that success. We don't see the struggles and the heartache and things. Second of all, what is successful for another person may or may not be, or well, I'm going to say it will not be exactly the same success for us, because we're not that person. It's not possible.
And that brings it all back to what we started, right? Relationship. How can you know any of these things? How can you care if you don't have the foundation of relationship? But I think we're got to wrap this up. We're running out of time.
And I do want to share and let people know that they can reach us and engage with us by going to our website. There is a free assessment if you're trying to, in fact, Mwanji, if you want to help with your volunteers and maybe get some understanding into your volunteers, if you go to our website and have them all complete the stress assessment that's there, it's free. And it will help. It'll be a starting place to get some insight into your volunteers to help be able to understand moving forward.
And understand their needs and how you can meet them. Absolutely. Next week, folks, we'll dive into, exactly what we just finished with. It's how to be a support system for your team. How to provide support, how to tailor it to their individual needs, and how to assess those needs. So join us, same, what does Kevin say? Same time, same bat channel?
Same bat time, same bat channel. It goes back to my Batman superhero days of the era gone by. But yes, we're here every Tuesday, 11 o'clock Eastern. Would love for all of you to join us. We'll be announcing it, and share it with other friends. Get them here. And we do like to hear from you. Thanks, Muhammad and Juanji. Next week, please be ready to share your thoughts with us, because your thoughts are valuable to us. So thank you, everyone. Have an amazing rest of your week, and we will hope to see you next week. God bless.